Big, expensive cities have a lot going for them. But if you live in one, you've probably noticed that these big, expensive cities keep getting more, well, expensive. You could always move away. You might have just started working remotely, so there's really nothing keeping you there. But then again, moving is a hassle. Well, what if someone paid you 10 grand to do it? What if they threw in free office space, a bicycle, or a gym membership? Programs in cities and states around the US are doing exactly that, and they're getting a lot of interest.
We've had over 50,000 applications.
About 90,000 applications.
We've had over 1,800 applicants from all over North America.
So are these nascent programs actually beneficial to their communities and the workers joining them? Or are they little more than flashy advertising campaigns for places looking for an injection of fresh talent? Millions of Americans migrate every year, but the coronavirus pandemic saw many more people move out from urban areas into smaller cities as remote work allowed them to do their jobs from home. In fact, more than 7 million households moved to a different county in 2020. That's 500,000 more than the year before. Smaller cities across the US are seeing this as an opportunity to attract lifelong residents.
The remote incentive programs that we're seeing pop up around the country all go a little bit like this. A city that's looking to lure new workers from other cities offers a monetary incentive or a cultural incentive for people to move.
Programs like this have exploded in popularity around the US over the last few years, and their offerings are getting more diverse and headline-grabbing as the pandemic prolongs.
The richest cash offer comes out of West Virginia. So theirs is a little over $20,000 that they're offering, $12,000 in cash and $8,000 in all kinds of amenities. So park membership, equipment rental. They're really trying to connect people to the outdoor wonders of West Virginia, and they're using the incentive to do that. Offers like Greensburg, Indiana, they're offering $5,000 of cash, but really the richness comes in their ability to sort of connect you to the community. They offer things like a grandparents on demand, where a local couple will, babysit your kids for date night or stand in for them at grandparents' day at school.
That's Evan Hawk. He co-founded MakeMyMove.com at the end of 2020 to help those curious about moving, just as the recent uptick in remote work was taking off.
We rolled it out nationally about a year ago. We've had over 40,000 people register and are sort of actively planning their moves on the platform.
As cities promote their best attributes, their incentive offerings are also getting more creative. How does $1,000 at Jimmy John's sound? Or some free plots of land? Or are free whitewater rafting or lift tickets more your speed?
For the first time in the country's history, there are tens of millions of people that are geographical free agents. They're looking for new homes. And that just means it's open season for communities that are trying to grow.
Before digging into these programs, let's step back and ask, what problem are they trying to solve? For the most part, they want highly paid, highly skilled workers to join their ranks.
It's a bit of a different model than cities used to be using, where they were incentivizing with tax breaks or kickbacks to whole companies to move. People would want an Amazon to move into their town so they could employ a lot of local workers.
Well, it makes sense. They have the West Coast Washington and the East Coast Washington.
Alexa, why should Amazon build HQ2 in Frisco?
Frisco, Texas thinks big.
We have blown up our regulatory process over the last couple of years so that people who've come to do business with us know that we are open for business.
And this is a kind of a twist on that model, where cities are looking at individual workers that aren't necessarily going to be employed in the local economy, but are going to be taking their salaries, spending at local restaurants, buying homes, paying taxes, and bringing their kids and their partners and maybe their family members.
You can find the nation's busiest program in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Tulsa started in 2018, before the pandemic, before the remote work way of life became so widespread. So they started with about 75 people. They've grown exponentially over the past few years. What they realized is there's a big problem with brain drain in Tulsa. A lot of people go to universities in the region and leave. So what Tulsa was trying to do is stem that brain drain.
There's over 1,300 people in Tulsa remote now. We really are looking for people that don't necessarily have a mentality of I'm coming to change a city, More so, they want to be a part of something awesome that's already happening. We have a weekly newsletter that goes out to our members that highlights all the different social events and gatherings that we have. We've got a Slack community that we post updates in there. Oftentimes things are happening organically as well with members. 90% of the folks that are done with their one-year commitment stay in Tulsa beyond that year.
Some programs, like Northwest Arkansas's Bitcoin and a Bike incentive, are designed not for pulling in thousands of new residents, but to deliberately select those with a set of specific qualities.
To date, we've got about 50 people on the ground that have taken advantage of the incentive program.
How to tell your spouse you're considering a move to Northwest Arkansas. Step 1, remind them of your vows.
What we're trying to do is identify the right types of talent. And the reason why is we have one of the strongest economies in the country, but it's built primarily on Walmart, Tyson, J.B. Hunt. There are 1,400 companies with presence here that supply Walmart. Right now, they're successful. They're going to continue to be successful, but they're not going to hire a lot more workers, right? Every region, they need more tech talent. They need more expertise in blockchain. And so this program is to really define those key people that are going to help move this region forward.
For Hawaii's program, Movers and Shakas, the goal isn't necessarily growing the population at all.
We are very focused on trying to bring back returning kama'aina, which are people who have lived in Hawaii. Typically refers to people who are born and raised here, which is very different, which can include Native Hawaiians, but not necessarily. Our program is really about bringing people to Hawaii to learn, contribute, and connect. A goal of our program isn't necessarily to have people move to Hawaii or move back to Hawaii, although that would be awesome, and we have a couple examples of that. But it's really to build long-lasting personal and professional ties and relationships to Hawaii. And what that does is reduce the economic distance with the continent.
Aside from people taking advantage of the programs themselves, their mere existence makes for good advertising.
It's a climb that's been started by so many. A climb taken by those who seek a life less ordinary.
Maybe you already wanted to move, and maybe already your mom lives in Savannah, Georgia, but you never thought it would be possible to make that kind of move, and then you see Savannah, Georgia putting together this kind of package, and it gets back on your radar. And for a lot of the people that these programs are luring, the $10,000 or $5,000 or whatever the case may be, is maybe covering just the moving costs, but isn't enough to make you uproot your entire life and move somewhere new.
So far, all of these programs are relatively small compared to the populations of the places in which they exist. So while they haven't caused too much fuss with locals,
there's traffic jams now on some of the main arterials. We're just not used to that, so our patience level is not quite there.
There is always going to be a healthy amount of skepticism to the arrival of newcomers.
Tulsa's program is funded with philanthropic dollars. It's funded by the George Kaiser Family Foundation, which is this big philanthropy based in town. That's the same for Northwest Arkansas's, which is funded by another philanthropy that's locally based. It seems like that's the dominant model so far, but some taxpayers have started to foot the bill in other cities. It's usually easier to make the sell to the public that you're giving money to outsiders when it's not taxpayer money funding these kinds of programs. In Northwest Arkansas, there's a really large urban-rural divide. There are a lot of hourly workers. They're paying tech workers, entrepreneurs, $10,000 in Bitcoin to move there. There is the sense among some that the money could be better spent incentivizing other things, like asking businesses to raise their minimum wage.
I myself was a skeptic, I actually got this role because of an op-ed that I wrote in the Star Advertiser, which is our local daily newspaper, which was largely against the program. I was like, why are we bringing in tech bros dripping with COVID to come and drive my rent up and destroy the aloha spirit? When it came to Hawaii, I felt very protective. What I realized is that us versus them kind of tribal mentality is very real, and it's innate, and we have to acknowledge that it's there. And we also have to ask ourselves, well, how do we bring in newcomers? How do we see things as not a zero-sum game?
Tulsa Remote's Justin Harlan admits that the program had some critics from the local community, but a recent independent economic impact report estimates it's brought in $62 million in local earnings into the city and added 600 jobs.
For many decades, we've seen export of talent out of a lot of communities towards these big economic centers. And so one way to think about this is a redistribution of a lot of that economic impact.
Of course, moving between cities can be a huge lifestyle change, and it's not necessarily for everyone.
A few weeks ago, it was literally snowing in the backyard. Listen, I moved to Las Vegas not to have snow like that.
Why I'm leaving Austin, Texas, it's really because of the lack of diversity.
I'm also in a lot of Facebook groups, and like all through the Facebook groups, people are like, the dating here is trash.
As for those big, expensive cities bleeding remote worker talent, there doesn't seem to be much to worry about. Between March 2020 and February 2021, 84% of movers in the US stayed in the same metro area. In New York City, the most popular place people in Manhattan move to? Brooklyn. In the end, even if you personally don't take part in or have any interest whatsoever in one of these programs, there is an advantage for these places to get their names out there.
I think for a lot of cities, they think there's nothing really to lose, despite some of the questions about its efficacy. It doesn't really hurt to say, you know, we're open to newcomers, we're a place that we want to put on the map.